Welcome back to Grit and Growth. This is part 2 of our conversation.
And if you haven't had a chance to check out part 1 yet, you might want to start there. It sets up a whole lot of what we're diving into today.
In the second half, we go deeper. More great stories, more impactful lessons, and a few transformational moments that really stuck with us.
I'm Justin Simpkins, founder and director of Prairie Hockey Academy, storyteller, passionate about growth, and reader of books on leadership and personal development.
And I'm Shane Sowden, head coach of Briarcrest men's basketball, a mentor to coaches and youth who believes leadership starts with the heart and grows through purpose.
Let's get into it.
Ladies, I really enjoyed meeting you almost about a year ago. You were both here in Cairnport at Briarcrest College helping out with at Youthquake, and it was fantastic hearing your story. I was very aware of you, just, the basketball community, when you get into it's very small in Canada. In some ways it's growing, but it was great to just chat with you after and get to know both of you. And something that stood out to me in our conversation was I was really curious hearing about your experiences at college apart from each other. And that was a season of growth for both of you. Not just because you were apart, but we've talked about the purpose of sport, the meaning of sport, and you both wanted to win. You wanted to excel. You wanted to be the best you could be. But something that stood out to me in our conversations was who you were becoming as young women. Your values were being shaped. Your faith was being shaped. And so, yeah, you had, it sounds to me like you guys had pretty positive experiences in university, but there was a bigger picture than basketball going on, both personally, beyond like underneath the surface, all those sorts of things. And I think we miss that so many times. And I think back to my journey playing Division I baseball in the States. Every summer I'd come home and people were always asking me about baseball. How did baseball go? How did baseball go? How'd you do? Why aren't you playing more? Why aren't you doing this? Oh, you did that, like all this thing. I was like, looking back on my experience, I was being shaped through all these experiences that have now helped me become a better coach now, and shaped who I am as a man. And there was something far deeper going on. If you could just speak to that, just through the challenges, the highs, the lows, the expectations, being a part, and this who you're becoming during that time. Because I think our audience is a lot of parents whose kids are in high school right now, looking what are they going to do after. And we are so caught up in the sport rather than who is our son or daughter becoming in the midst of all that. And so that's a really long-winded intro question. But if you can run with that, go for it.
Lots of things there.
Yeah.
I think sport ultimately exposes us in a way to ourselves, or pursuing anything with intention. And even I think when I was in university, it definitely exposed the comparison I had within myself and Michelle in university, because the person I was comparing myself to, because for sure we sharpened each other, best teammates. Internally, though, there was a lot of comparison going on for myself. And so that exposed itself in, now I have a whole new set of people to compare myself to, which was really a maturing process and a growth of, okay, who am I? Why am I here? What is the value I add to this new team, being in another environment, being a small fish in a big pond now? And how am I going to feel secure in what I'm bringing to the team? Not even, like outside of basketball, who am I in this totally new environment? What's my identity going to be? And for me, I found myself really having an identity, oddly enough, on my team, and then being, having a different, I had a nickname on my team. I was Katherine with everyone else in my school because I didn't want to be known just as a basketball player. And so my nickname, I never told people my nickname when I introduced myself to my classmates, because that was my basketball identity. And so it was very interesting to me to see that, because I knew I didn't want to just be known as a basketball player, especially being in a new environment. It was an opportunity to, build myself, build my identity, not just, being a twin, but in this new space and in maturity and being like an adult now. So it was very interesting to, make new friends and have that desire to not want to be known just as a basketball player and as an athlete, but get to know people on like a neutral playing field of who are you? What are you about? What do you like? Like, what do you value? Those kinds of things were very interesting to dig into because no one knew I was a basketball player to start. Like there was a kind of freedom in that to start my university life, so to speak.
Yeah, I didn't have. We were wrestling with different things. I was totally wanted to be the best, and I put in a lot of work, and my identity was basketball, and I totally owned it because, I at the time I like worked super hard. I was always in the gym, because I was like, this is how we get better, and I loved it. At the same time, very achievement and performance driven. And so I rode that emotional roller coaster like no other, just of we did great, we suck. We did great, we suck. We like I, not we, like I didn't really care how, like, not that I didn't care, but like the team could do well, but if I personally sucked, I felt like a bag of potatoes. Like, and I was in my coach's office a lot, just being like, I was a hot mess. I call it my hot mess express that I rode during university. Because it was a roller coaster of emotion, because I was super tied. My identity was tied to my performance at the time. And it's just not super sustainable. And it's not realistic to think that, every game is going to be the best game, and just all the things that are tied to performance that are out of our control. But if you're one, like myself, who thought I could control outcomes, then if I think I can control outcomes and the outcome isn't what I wanted or expected, then that means that it was my fault, as opposed to just being like, that is sport and basketball and life, and you don't control the outcome. But I didn't know that. And I don't think I had, the wherewithal at the time to seek out a different perspective. It was just like, this is what it is. I'm trying to be the best. And if I'm not the best on any given night, it's because, I'm not good enough. And those kinds of things that I identified with in university. I didn't know, this is all hindsight looking back. In the time, I was like, this is the only way. Like, I didn't have another perspective of like, this is just my perspective and there could possibly be another perspective. It was like, everyone must feel like this or they're not trying. Like, that was kind of my perspective, but that was me. That was at the time. That's what I was wrestling with. And it wasn't until I had, I had a teammate who was a great influence, and she kind of stood out and like who she was and what she was about. And she like didn't stress about it. And initially in my first couple of years, I was like, she obviously doesn't care enough about what she's doing. But it's no, she just had like a healthy perspective on like what you could control and what you couldn't. And she was, a Christian who ended up leading me to Christ. But like at the time I didn't know it. I just thought it was like, either you tried really hard and you were emotional when it didn't go your way, or you didn't try hard. And it was the combination of that teammate and actually getting around the national team when I was in 2012. And I ended up making the Olympic team, which I didn't really expect to make, but it was a great experience. But the moment that I will never forget is we were at an Olympic qualifier, kind of a big tournament. I'm like 17, 18 years old. And the women on this team are like, there's 10, 15-year veterans who this is their last go around. And we're at Olympic qualifier and playing some kind of meaningful games, like trying to qualify for 2012. And I remember going into the locker room after a really close loss, or a loss in general. And where I was coming from, when you lose, everyone sees that it was, hard and it's emotional. And I went into the locker room afterwards and these women were like, emotionally stable, first of all. But like,
Emotionally stable.
They weren't on the express.
They were not riding the express train that I was on, and I was
Hot Mess
confused.
Express.
They were not on the Hot Mess Express, and I didn't play. I was like riding the pine, but I was also 18 years old, so
Yeah.
what did I expect? But I was observing, and like no one was emotional, and like everyone was just getting changed and showering and stuff, and having like a regulated conversation about sometimes not even what just happened. Like it was just a conversation, and I was like, I don't understand why this is not a bigger deal. But through like conversations with them, it's like everyone knew why they were there. No one was trying to lose. Everyone was doing their best. There was no like, I couldn't question them whether they were giving their best because it was the national team and I respected them. And so that was a turning point for me where I was like, oh, maybe there's a different way.
Right.
Right. It wasn't like they weren't prepared for the game.
No.
They didn't rest the night before. It was none of those things.
Mm-mm.
It was just they were secure in all those preparation and their understanding of what they could control and what they couldn't. I know, Michelle, I know this is a lot of this, like you said, is hindsight and in reflection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess in the same curiosity of hindsight or reflection, for you in your life or for others, it's either what was the greatest cost of riding the Hot Mess Express when you look back at your college career, or what is the dangers of it for others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's you miss out on the joy that you can have while you're playing. Like, I think that there was times that I didn't enjoy because I was beating myself up so much. So I think it was like living so much in the past that you miss the present sometimes. And that's too bad. So I think you definitely miss out when you're so focused on that and not enjoying the process of learning. Like I think maybe more could have been learned or more growth could have happened faster if I recognized what was actually happening versus what I did or did not have control over.
Do you feel like in those moments, do relationships with teammates flourish when we're doing that? Are these pieces that cost us as well?
That's a great.
Catherine, feel free to jump in. I mean, you observed this too. This is your twin sister, right?
Yeah, I want to what's your experience on the Hot Mess Express? I don't know.
Definitely a Hot Mess Express. I mean, the more I, reflect on it, there is a process of that's maturing. There is a process of you don't know what you don't know until you have some new information and some experiences and people and influences to kind of guide you. So there was, it was similar in a sense of we win, I'm great. We lose, I suck. We win, I'm great. We lose, I suck. Which is, it's not even until maybe the last 7 years where I actually had freedom and joy to play. But I digress. But back to your great question. Michelle, do you have thoughts on that before
Can you repeat the question? I know it was a good one. And then I was like, Catherine's going to take this away. And then I forgot what the question was.
It was your question, Justin. It was good. It was gold.
I think it was just really still sticking on that line of what does this, as we reflect in these moments and we go, hey, what did that cost me? Being in that, and it's, it cost you the joy you mentioned at times and just being so stuck in the past. And I just said, does it cost you relationships as well? When you look back, maybe some of those teammates and I think of a guy like a Michael Jordan. I mean, didn't he say, I have nothing, he kind of talked about this idea, if they're not mad about losing, I have nothing in common with them kind of a thing. But I think it cost Jordan a lot as well, right? We see this in his relationships in life.
Judgmental spirit that I thought I had of, maybe to Michelle's point of when you're explaining, I was like, oh yeah, I felt that for sure of, they're not they're not trying hard enough. Or I had an idea in my head of what effort was, and not an understanding of people are at where they're at when they come in and are also going through the same maturing process of being in a new environment, figuring themselves out, figuring the team out. And had I maybe, looking back in hindsight, like come alongside said teammates and ask them like, so what are you struggling with? Like we might be in the same boat. Maybe could have built some stronger bridges of, you know, of having unity on a team versus I'm sure everyone in their own mind was thinking something of, there was a competitive element that instead of unifying on the desire to be excellent and compete, it was individual, maybe isolation of they must be competing against me and I'm competing against them for whatever playing time, the accomplishments, the achievements, whatever it is. But for me, I'm sure there was some level of judgment based on what I thought meant you're doing your best.
Yeah. I think for me, it was actually less of like a judgment. It's more like I'm just going to do it myself then. And so that piled on, that added more weight to the load I was carrying of like, I need to have a certain outcome because I was like, well, I'm the only one that's going to make it happen. And I I did value my teammates. I didn't really know how to build deeper relationships at the time. But I do remember being extremely frustrated my senior year because I was being like, how do I motivate them? No one wants to do anything. And then my assistant coach, bless her heart, thank goodness, she was like, it's not your job this was for practice. Like nobody wanted to show up and all the things. She's like, it's not your job to motivate them. And I was like, I never really thought about that. That's why we have maybe some coaches. I don't know. But I was like loading it all on my back, thinking I need to do everything. So I think I more just made it even more my fault.
Check out our new book, Significance Over Success, packed with real stories, reflections, and lessons on what it truly means to grow with purpose. Hey everyone, it's Shane. Lately, I've been trying to be a little more intentional about what I throw in my gym bag and what we pack in the kids' lunches for snacks, pre and post workout, and just for when those cravings hit. Recently, through some friends, I connected with Katherine Meats, and I've honestly been impressed. They make jerky and jerky bars using grass-fed Canadian beef, sweetened with honey, no nitrates, lower sodium, just real ingredients. After a lift or on a road trip, it's an easy protein option that doesn't feel processed or heavy. And as a parent, I like knowing that the kids are reaching for something simple and clean instead of another ultra-processed snack. Katherine was built by Carmen and Carter Bazan, a Canadian ranch family who really care about how food is raised and who it feeds. They even give 2% back to help feed Canadians through charities across the country. If you want to learn more, check them out at carzanmeats.ca. That's carzanmeats.ca.
I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, and I think there's a piece I want to get back to is, Katherine, you said even, it wasn't until 7 years ago that you really played with that freedom and that joy, and I want to get to that in a minute, but there's a transition period here where both of you go on to play on the national program in the Olympic program, and I think that's important and relevant. And at the same time, I want to say something because we've had a couple other guests on the podcast. One was a professional soccer player, and it didn't happen for him until he was like in his late 30s in his career, where he recognized where he could slow everything down. And he realized that his job was actually just to make his teammates better. And he's like, if I could make my teammates great, like then I just showed up every day with this love of playing that I got to serve my teammates and make them great. And I didn't have all this external pressure anymore. And I was like, man, how do we get there? How do I get a 15-year-old there? Can I change their trajectory by helping them see that servant leader type of model? And yet I feel like, Michelle, you're kind of starting to, recognize at 18 that maybe some of these ladies that are in their last kick at the can, if you will, of the Olympic program, that they're just there, they're confident in who they are, and they can play with freedom. And Katherine experienced it 7 years ago and changed it. And so I want to know, as we go into the Olympic side, did making that Olympic team and being around that group of professionals, is that when the breakthrough happened, or did the pressure actually collapse more at that point until there was breakthrough?
I know that my first couple years on the team, there wasn't yet the realization of what was happening in my value. Although at the same time, like I was 18, like junior, going into my junior year. And where I was the big fish in the smaller pond at Utah, like leading my team, best player, blah, 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 onto getting comfortable there and then being on the Olympic team where I was like 18 playing with 30-year-olds. And I still, unfortunately, had a spirit of entitlement. Even though I recognize like, wow, these ladies are great, but I was like, but why am I not playing? Even though looking back, I'm like, that's insane to think, but that's where I was at. And so it wasn't until figuring some of those pieces on that the weight of the Olympic team, or the national team, it actually was heavy for a long time. I never felt my best when I was there. I never played super confidently because I had this still performance driven, even though I was like working through it kind of, but I still didn't recognize my value that I was able to bring fully as myself without having to play. I was like, yeah, I'm being myself. I'm a great teammate. Like for sure. I loved being there. I was the biggest cheerleader for everyone. But at the same time, still being like, but I'm not able to perform. So that still makes me feel bad. But I know I'm a great team. So it was like this wrestling of knowing that it's okay that I don't play, but like still having a role. So it definitely wasn't on the national team where I got through that. That was kind of like we're still riding it a little bit. But Catherine, I don't know your experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was, yeah. Yeah, well, Michelle was on the national, she made an Olympics in 2012. And I also had an entitled spirit. And also the comparison, I was like, how dare they take her and not me, and not both of us because we're a package. I don't know, in my mind. I was like, this exposes my insecurity if she ever does something without me. So it was such an exposing year, which really tied into where I came to faith in 2012 was because this was like, I thought everyone in the world would care that I did not make a team and Michelle did. And that was really where I had to get rooted in like, okay, who the heck am I if I don't have this achievement of whatever status, accomplishment of, for now, at this point, it was making the Olympic team. And then I had a great realization, thankfully, from some different influences where they were like, no one cares as much as you think they do.
Yeah.
Which is very important to realize that people don't care about, what you're doing in your life as much as you think they do. Like, it is a great sobering moment when you can realize that, and then pursue the things that you actually value. But I guess the freedom, during the once I made the national team, there's still a lot of pressure that I felt to perform, and it was like, don't mess up kind of pressure, which doesn't ultimately help you play your best when you're thinking, don't mess up. So that was too bad. And really through a few years professionally, it was, there was a couple years where I was really felt free when I played. Like I was coming in as an underdog kind of mentality of, okay, I'm on not a great team. So like, let me just do my best and carry the load. And that was actually, those were a couple fun years. And then when I, transferred to some clubs that were in a bigger league, there was a little bit more pressure to perform at a high level. I felt myself reverting to, okay, don't mess up. And it really did help me play my best. And it was really when we started playing 3x3 that there was so much out of our control. I realized things were always out of my control, but there was so much out of our control as a team and figuring this sport out that I had to like let go of the results because it was a heightened awareness that we were just starting a sport, and we were totally beginners. So we were going to mess up a lot. And there was this freedom that came from like, yeah, we're just going to mess up because that's how we learn. And so unfortunately, that was at the point where I was really like, oh, so much is on my control that I'll just play basketball and see what happens. That was kind of the point.
Okay. Thank you, Katherine. I think I appreciate you opening up on that. And even just, I'm curious, and I'd love it if you could tell me more. I mean, 2012, you mentioned, this is a journey for you, and you're at this spot where you didn't necessarily use the word humiliation, but it's like you feel like people are recognizing that you didn't make a team that your sister may have. And you have a moment where you said you're coming to faith, and inside of that, there's this peace that comes with it too. And so I just do you want to talk to us more about that?
Yeah. It was definitely a moment of peeling back the layers of what I was building my identity on. Speaking to identity, it's like what we figure out why we're here and what our purpose is, and who's on the pedestal of our lives and where we're putting the power. And for me, it was like, I'm on the pedestal. I am actually the ruler of the world, whatever it is. And if, what I think is supposed to happen doesn't, that's when things would crumble. And so for me, it was really getting connected to, one of my teammates, similar to Michelle. I had a teammate who was rooted and grounded in what she believed about herself, her value, and saw her struggle through, coming in as a freshman, really hard for her, but she was, had a great community. She knew that, basketball wasn't everything. She still struggled with being frustrated on the court, but she wasn't riding the emotional roller coaster. And so saw that at a time when I was kind of searching for like being rooted in something that wasn't performance and wasn't basketball. And so in 2012, when I got cut, Michelle continued on to make the team. I was really like, who the heck am I? Like, why, if I don't succeed in basketball, like, do I matter? Like, am I good enough? What are people going to think of me? And it was then where I was like, okay, finding out there's a God who loves me despite anything I do or accomplish. He loves me. And so there was this, process of like living from being loved, not for approval, that really took root that year. And in the next 3 years, 2-3 years of my college career of, okay, am I going to live from approval or for approval? And it's very much different heart stance and way you approach things. And obviously that didn't, switch overnight because that's still a lifelong process. And for sure the next 5-7 years before I really had that freedom in playing sport. But it was a struggle of identity at its root. And for me, if we're not rooted in something that is unchanging, then our heart stance and our paradigm of the world will always be changing because we're trying to anchor it to something moving. And when we're anchored to a God that never changes, then we can always go back to a home base.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah.
And Michelle, I'm curious about your story too, because I found it fascinating talking to both of you. Is you went different places, yet came to faith in two different states, very far away from each other. Yet God was doing something in both your lives.
Yeah. Our journeys were like intertwined in a really cool way. But very similar. I had a teammate who was herself and not trying to be any of us who were doing things that we shouldn't be doing. But anyways, trying to get approval, trying to earn it in different ways. And I just saw her just be like, looking back, I was like, it's hilarious. She was probably watching us like, oh, poor, like just Michelle. I think she saw something in me too. And we had some good conversations of just being real. But she would be like, it was Plouffe was my nickname. She's like, Plouffe, why are you doing that? Like just straight up, but just like in a really loving way, like not judgmental, but just like she was herself. She's not going to do the things we're doing, but she also didn't make us feel bad about doing stuff. She was just like, no, I'm good. I got my own community. At the time, I didn't really have community outside of my team. So my biggest influences were my teammates. And she had, people that were older than her potentially that were like grounded. And so she was just different. And so it was probably it was my junior year because she was 1 year older than me. And I just was like, I don't want to live. I knew I was like things that I shouldn't be doing that I was doing. And like, there was always like a wrestling in my heart of like, I know I shouldn't be doing things, but let's just do them because I don't really have a bigger reason why I wouldn't just follow, the crowd or like my flesh really is what it was. But I started hanging around her more because I was like, I don't even like the stuff I'm doing. It's not even fun. Like, it's not great influences. I don't feel great after. And so I just was like switched. I was like, I'm not gonna. I don't know what drew me exactly, but I knew I saw something in her that I was like, she looks like she's at peace with herself. And I think that's what it was. It was her peace. It was her confidence in who she was. And looking back, I was like, it was very attractive to someone who was wrestling and like searching really. And so I don't remember exactly what it looked like, but I just remember being like, that looks more of what I want. I saw the turmoil. I felt it in my heart of all the drama of going on about in other circles. And I was just like, that looks better. The calm, the confidence, the assurance, the peace is what I want. And there's probably Holy Spirit working, but I just started hanging out with Rachel more. I started like going to her church. She probably invited me because I was asking her questions or just spending more time with her because my heart was drawn to that spirit versus, the other people that I was hanging out with. And so that was my probably greatest influence. That coupled with the only other time I remember going to a church that wasn't a Catholic mass, because we grew up at a Catholic school and went to masses, was when our older sister, she's 6 years older than us. And one time she came home from university and she brought us to a church service in our hometown. And I just remember going to it and being like, I actually understand what's happening here. Like, this makes sense. Like, I feel like it's English, like it's speaking my language at a time where I had never heard really the gospel before. And so it was that seed planted. And it's funny because our older sister also came to Christ in university 6 years earlier. It's just so interesting how God works. But and so there's these seeds planted and like a pursuing of the peace that Rachel, my teammate, had that really got me on the journey of, okay, I want to live different. How do I do that? On the identity piece, for sure, being rooted in a God that never changes. And that kind of started the process of being, more at peace with myself, with the world. That's kind of where it snowballed from, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Our paths.
Really cool stories. And I think, I have a friend that would talk, he would say things like, it's important for us, I was looking at your teammates, Rachel and Melissa, or Michelle, I think they were names, right? And it's like recognizing when we're on assignment. And I think they were both on assignment in where they were placed and what the role that God had for them. And then this piece that Katherine, you kind of spoke about that I think we all struggle with, and it's our heart sometimes can get really hard, and there's different issues that we have to deal with, and sometimes, I think there's this like voice that can come in our head that can tell you that we're not enough, right? But it's actually not true. I mean, the patent's written in Scripture that we are enough just because we were created as a child of God, and so it's like, but yet we enter this stupid loop. By arguing with an idiot saying that, well, I am enough. Well, no, you're not enough. Well, but I am enough. See, I bought a new car. Whatever it might be, it's like this piece instead of just the believing of it, where, Katherine, I think you came to going, actually, now I'm going to perform out of approval as opposed to seeking
Or
it.
approval.
Yeah, for it, right? So appreciate both of you sharing that. And I know I really want to still kind of, I know we've been talking about lots of stuff, and I want to bounce a bit, because inside of this change and everything, there's also a change happening on the court. The two of you have decided to, Michelle, I feel like you were one of the founders of this 3x3 Canada basketball. Talk to us briefly. I'm intrigued by the event. I know it's starting to gain a lot more notoriety. I think colleges are talking about starting programs, or maybe they have. Give us a few minutes on 3x3 and what's going on in your world these days.
Yeah. Well, 2019 is when we started it up. Basically, myself and Paige Crozen, who I actually went to Utah with. She was there for 2 years while I was there.
Saskatchewan.
Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Yep.
And we had played 1 year, the three of us, together on the junior national team in 2010. And then she came to Utah in 2013, which was super fun. And then 2018, we were chatting, and I had decided to step away from the 5-on-5 team. So I was like, I had made peace with that not being a part of my identity and moving on. And then we're on the phone, and we're just chatting about, like, we should start, like, Canada doesn't have a 3x3 team, and it's going to be in the 2020 Olympics. So we should start a team. That was the conversation. And then I was like, great, Katherine obviously will be the third teammate. And so we just need one more, because you need 4 people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was me, Paige, and Katherine, and we were, I don't really know why this made sense to us at the time, but we were just like, yeah, we'll do it. Let's be Team Canada. Then we started, once we made the decision, it's funny because this is true in all of life.
Let's just be Team Canada.
Let's just be Team Canada. But like, we had no clue how it was going to work out.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the assurance came from exactly. But I do believe there was a greater purpose and plan over it. But at the time, looking back, for us to have that conversation and be so committed in our heart to do something like that, I can't explain. But we made the decision to figure it out. Like, it wasn't like we were like, let's see if we can get all the not that we weren't trying to get all the pieces in place, but we decided first and then acted on that decision coming out of it. And it was like the funnest time. Like 2019, we Katherine emailed someone from FIBA 3x3 and was like, hey, we want to be Team Canada. Can we play on the world tour? And then they were like, sure. Like, all the things that came together. We didn't have a 4th teammate until like 48 hours before we were playing our first tournament in Italy. So like, she didn't have a path. Like, it was crazy stuff. So it's so fun. That's kind of where it started. And Canada basketball was just like, go get them. And we were like, super, love that. So we were like, we're going to make it happen. So 2019, we like played in 7 tournaments. One was in Edmonton, actually, the final, but we were like in Europe, mostly Europe. Paige had a 6-month-old baby. Mm-hmm. We were just so all in to a point I just can't even explain. And it was so fun. We were like, we were like we were doing everything. We were booking flights. We were looking up things. We were coordinating with hosts. We were like a startup that made no money. But we were wearing all the hats. So it was super fun. We learned a lot.
And you got to travel the world.
Definitely.
And we traveled the world.
Yeah. So many adventures. Like, should write them down. There's just so many fun times of figuring so many things out. Yeah. I mean, and we like a challenge. So we were lit.
Yeah.
We didn't end up qualifying though. So that part was unfortunate. Okay. But
eventually it worked
out. Neither do many startups, by the way. They often, they falter a little bit, raise a little more capital, and they eventually make it. So good. It's it's okay. Yeah. It's a cool story. Nonetheless, I think, you know what, really, I would really just say, maybe in closing, I'd like to get to that. If you could go back and talk to your 15-year-old self, what would you say? And maybe we'll start with Katherine.
Wow. I would tell my 15-year-old self that like everything is, there's joy in everything, and don't take yourself too seriously. Just have fun. Have fun would be my message. And like really knowing where I was at 15, that like everyone's making mistakes out here. It is not just an isolated, bubble of you taking on everything. And to just have fun. That's really would be my message to my 15-year-old self. Okay. And also that God has a plan and it'll all work out like it is supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Similar, I would say, listen to Katherine, whatever. No, I'm just kidding.
I agree.
You're going to get the bigger bedroom. It's okay.
Don't hurt her. You'll win. It's fine. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think it's, I would say to my 15-year-old self that, you are enough. And that growth comes through, sometimes frustration, sometimes pain, but there is reward on the other side of faithfulness to just being committed, and you don't need to ride the crazy train. Actually enjoy the views on the way. And I think it's more joy. Not that I didn't have joy at all, but I feel like there could have been more at the time. So I would just say to trust God, trust the process, and it's going to work out for His glory. So
Awesome. Well, ladies, we really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate you making the time to talk with us today, and we're looking forward to sharing this with our listeners. So thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to Grit and Growth.
Yeah. Hey, if you enjoyed that episode, it would mean a lot to us if you shared it with a friend, a teammate, a family member, or just left us a quick review wherever you listen. That's how we reach more people and keep great guests coming your way.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss future episodes with incredible guests and real stories that'll change and inspire you.
And until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and keep growing.